It's TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down.
And welcome back to another edition of the TWSN Tailgate Show. As always, I am your host, Matt Levine, joined by my pretty much permanent co-host at this point, Bill Sparks. And we have a special guest for everyone here today on the eve of the college football playoff semifinals. We got our guy, Will Holland, who is normally in our chat section, but he's actually here now. So, Will, how are you doing? You're the guest. I'm going to ask you first because we don't care what Bill has to say at this point.
I'm doing great, man. It's awesome to finally get out of the comment section and stop trolling you guys in there and get on here on stream with you guys, chat up some college football. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, of course. We appreciate every comment you've made, even your Western Kentucky nonsense that you've kind of talked about all year long. I want to point out LSU did beat Western Kentucky. It was a little tough, but they did pull it out. Bill, how are you doing today?
I am doing great after a good round of semifinal college football action. Some of it a little more surprising than people might have thought, me included. But I'm excited to talk these games. We're going to talk a lot about them. We're going to talk some transfer portal news. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything tonight, get you guys ready for these semifinal games. Matt, where should we start?
There's a lot that we can talk about, Bill.
Yeah.
It is always here. I just want to, before we get into it, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have videos coming out. We have content coming out like this show. Like the video, it does help everything. We do truly appreciate it. We just want to thank everyone for tuning in. But as Bill mentioned, we're going to get into it. We need to talk about what happened in the quarterfinals because there was some stuff that happened. First off, the Ohio State Buckeyes, the defending champions, are out. They were knocked out pretty easily by the Miami Hurricanes, I will say. As someone who said Ohio State would win the game, I was wrong. Bill, you were right. I have to give you that. What do you want to talk about, Bill? Because I feel like we need to talk about Ohio State for a minute and just that game in general. And Will, chime in whenever you want. Throw your opinions out there. I know you're the biggest Ohio State fan out there, so talk about whatever you guys are. Bill, take the floor. I'm going to give you the floor because you did call this. You did say that Miami would win.
Yeah, I called it before the game, and I'd called it since the start of the college football playoff. That right side of the Miami offensive line was concerning. You saw the flaws in the Indiana Big Ten championship, that they were getting home to Julian Sayin and making life uncomfortable for him. And now going up against Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor, who are pound for pound the best 1-2 punch on a defensive line in this college football playoff. They exposed Ohio State, because the other issue is you can counteract that if the run game gets going. It never got going. Bo Jackson was 11 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown. That's not going to be enough to stay the execution of Ruben Bain Jr. and Akeem Mesidor. And we saw it. Carson Beck is not going to lead this team to a national championship berth. It's going to be this defense. Carson Beck did just enough, and sometimes that's okay. But, Will, what are your thoughts on the Miami-Ohio State matchup?
So, a little bit of background here. I'm not an Ohio State fan, contrary to belief. I have picked Ohio State in every single game since, I believe, the 2023 Cotton Bowl when they lost to Missouri. I picked Missouri in that game. Every single game that Ohio State has played since then, up until last week, I had picked Ohio State. The morning of the Cotton Bowl, I woke up, and I had been floating it back and forth in my mind a little bit. And I finally decided to pull the trigger. I went with Miami. I said that I pretty much said exactly what Bill just said. It just made too much sense to me that Miami defensive line, the whole front seven is just nasty. And I knew that they were going to get after Ohio State. It was a gut call that I had to make, and it came true. And I'm proud of that pick.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I reverse jinxed Ohio State. I was rooting for Miami all the way. I'm not afraid to admit it. I've talked about on this show that I was worried a little bit about Ohio State. You know, Bill, you've obviously broken down the offensive line issues that they had. Miami, I can't get a read on the Hurricanes. I know they are 2 wins from a championship, right? Let's call it what it is. They are 2 wins from a championship, which would be awesome for the program considering where they've been over the last 20 years. But I can't get a read on this team because they've been so up and down, so inconsistent, and you just never know what you're going to get from Carson Beck game to game. And I guess when you have a defense as good as they do, you don't need him to be incredible. I think that's probably the best thing going for Carson Beck at this point, that he could end up potentially winning a championship, and he didn't really do a whole lot, which is kind of awesome in a way for him. I mean, he gets to be called a national champion if they were to win. But Miami, I mean, how ironic would it be if the lone ACC team were to make the championship game? After all of the crap that people talked about the ACC, after all of the nonsense that happened with Notre Dame, Miami ends up in the championship game. Granted, they still have to go through Ole Miss, who we will talk about here in a minute, but the storylines heading into this Ole Miss and just Miami game alone are just incredible. But Miami they have a weird feeling. I don't know. Something's going on with that team. You get this grinded out win over Texas A&M, and then you beat the defending champions, who everyone said was going to crush you, except for Bill and Will, apparently. So credit to you two. But it's just a weird situation going on down there. I don't know. Miami is Miami. We'll talk more about Miami here in a minute, but I have to ask. I have to ask about some of the other stuff that we saw over the last, in the quarterfinal. I mean, okay, Georgia lost, Ole Miss, right?
Yep.
What do we make of this, guys? Because the last time we saw these two teams play, Georgia pretty much beat them. I mean, it was close-ish at the end of the game, but Georgia handled it pretty well. This time, that was a hell of a game. Let's just call it what it is. That was a hell of a game, right? Credit to Ole Miss. Georgia didn't come through. What do you guys make of that? Because I was watching it and I found myself stunned. That was the word that I used, stunned. Will, what did you think of Ole Miss and just Georgia's lack of, I don't want to say preparation, but just lack of being aware in the crucial moments?
So I couldn't have got this pick more wrong. Where I got the last one very right, I got this one very wrong. I had Georgia all the way. I thought that they were going to beat them more definitively than last time, because you look at Georgia the last, let's call it 2 months or so. The defense hasn't been amazing, but the front seven has been much better. They've been applying more pressure. They've been getting to the quarterback a little bit more. You can still get that secondary, which we've seen. But I thought that coming into this game, the Georgia defense was going to look like the old Georgia defenses that were on those national champion teams, or at least a little bit closer to them. That wasn't really the case. And then on the other side, here's the big thing. I thought that Ole Miss's defense was going to get got by that Georgia offense. And the Ole Miss defense, credit to them, they came up with some very timely stops. And sometimes they've proved sometimes you don't have to play lockdown defense. You don't need to be the 2001 Miami Hurricanes. You just got to go out there, be timely, get a big stop on fourth down, get a big stop in the fourth quarter or a couple, and that's good enough to win the ball game. And that was very impressive to me, and that's something that I'm going to take note of moving forward for this team.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, credit to Ole Miss. They made plays when they had to, and it's honestly one of the better stories that we have seen. But Bill, what do you make of it? I hate to ask this question because I hate when people do it, but did Georgia lose this game or did Ole Miss win this game? Because I think it goes either way for me.
It goes either way, but I think if I had to pinpoint it, I would say Georgia's offense lost this game for them. And that's not against Ole Miss's defense. That's not slighting Pete Golding in the slightest. But when you looked at that, the last time these two teams played, Georgia had over 500 yards of total offense. They were moving the ball at will against Ole Miss. And to finish with only 343 yards, which sounds like a lot, but considering on the flip side of the coin, you gave up almost 500 and 362 of it to Chambliss in the passing game alone. We all talked about this Georgia defense wasn't the Georgia defense of old. This is just not the same Bulldog defense that we're used to seeing from Kirby Smart. We're used to seeing vicious, attacking, downhill striking defense. And it seems like he's made this change where it's more play it back, don't give up the big play. Part of that's because he's got younger talent. Part of that is just because maybe he just doesn't trust the talent he's got. But That's okay. We just saw what Miami did with a quarterback that, hey, he's not going to make mistakes. We can afford to play back a little bit. Georgia doesn't have those horses. Gunnar Stockton doesn't have that arm. Nate Frazier, 15 carries for 86 yards is your leading rusher. Zachariah Branch, 67 yards and a touchdown is your leading receiver. That is far from what we've been accustomed to seeing from Georgia. And when you have a defense that gives up almost 500 yards of total offense, that's not going to cut it in the SEC, let alone the CFP.
No, I mean, we've talked about it all year. You had Georgia's offense as your fraud of the week. What, month or two ago?
About a month ago, yeah.
It came back and it bit them. It hurt them in the end, and it was kind of tough to watch at moments throughout the game. I don't know. That's really what I have to say about Georgia. I'll ask. I have a question for you guys here in a minute about just Kirby Smart. I'll just ask it right now since we're on the topic of Georgia. Is Kirby still a top coach? Because his team, since they won their back-to-back championship, right? Which, look, I am not taking that away from him. That was awesome. You cannot take that away from him. His teams have underperformed the last few years. In the last 2 years or so, with NIL going like crazy, Georgia has been bounced out in the second round technically of the CFP, and his teams haven't put that much fight up. We talk about Kirby Smart as this top number one coach in the league in the sport. Bill, you and I talked about it last week. There's no coach you would want preparing for a game better than Kirby. Mm-hmm. But his teams haven't shown up when it's mattered over the last few years. So, Will, I'm going to throw it to you first. Do you still think he's a top coach in college football, or is he starting to kind of slip a little bit?
I do think he's still a top coach. I would keep him top 5. I think that's pretty reasonable, top 5 head coach. There's not many guys that you would probably take over him, but I think he is losing a step, right, on the recruiting front, on the game preparation standpoint. I feel like he is losing a little bit of step, and a big sign of it was a couple of maybe months ago when he had a quarterback flipped to Notre Dame. He's losing his recruiting edge. He's losing his edge getting his guys ready. And I know he had a very young team this year, and I give a lot of credit to him. That was a good coaching job he's done this season because those guys are young, they're inexperienced, and he got them to an SEC championship. So it's a tricky conversation for me. I believe in him personally. I think he's still a top 5 coach. However, I'm taking Lanning. I'm taking Signetti. I'm taking Mario Cristobal. I'm taking Marcus Freeman. There might be a few more guys I take over him, and I think that is a sign of the times. I think that Kirby is from an era that is dying. I don't know if he's going to be able to adjust and keep up in this era as we move more towards a transfer portal heavy, NIL heavy era that sees the playing field leveled.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the discussion we can have for a lot of coaches. I mean, Nick Saban left college football because he didn't really want to deal with it anymore.
He got out before it was too late.
Yeah, no, exactly. Bill, are you on the same boat, or are you still like, no, Kirby is the top guy? Like, I don't care. He's fine.
I think Kirby is still a top 5 guy. I think if you break it down, like Will talked about, you have Dan Lanning, you have Kurt Signetti, Marcus Freeman, Mario Cristobal, and then there's a conglomeration there between Kirby Smart, Ryan Day, and then you could look at some other names, maybe even Joey McGuire with the way he coached Texas Tech. The concern I have for Kirby Smart is his staff. Mike Bobo as an offensive coordinator it's not fitting. It's not gelling. Same thing for Glenn Schumann as the defensive coordinator. When you have a coaching staff that just feels like two polar opposites in that Bobo and Schumann, they want to play more kind of off the pedal, kind of go with the flow of the game. And Kirby Smart is a push through the wall type of guy. That's eventually going to clash in styles and clash on the field. And we saw it in the Ole Miss game. You saw where Georgia wanted to press the pace and Georgia wanted to put pedal to the metal, and the play calling from those coordinators just fell back. And like Will talked about too, they are losing the edge in recruiting. They just lost Jared Curtis to Vanderbilt. That's huge. If you had told somebody 10 years ago, hey, Vanderbilt's going to flip a commitment from Georgia, you would have been committed into a place with a straitjacket. That's insane. But that's where we're at. That's the sign of the times in the NIL. That's the sign of the times today. I truly think if Georgia's going to get to the heights to where it needs to go, they need a refresh on this staff, and they need a staff that matches what Smart's vision is. And right now, I couldn't tell you what the vision is between the hedges between those three.
Yeah, no, I'd agree 100%. And I think, like I said, we're going to start to see some of these top tier programs that we are used to seeing not, finding as much success on the field because of the way college football is nowadays. It's no longer the name of the school is going to only be the thing that attracts prospects or players. It's money and the brand. It's both now. And I mean, look at Texas Tech, for example. And we'll talk about the portal here in a minute, but look at Texas Tech, right? They were always like that middle of the pack school. They had a couple good seasons. Now they could potentially be a powerhouse because of the money that they are shelling out towards players. I mean, I'm going to bring this up. Look at Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss is 2 wins from a championship because of Lane Kiffin's ability to be like, hey, I know I can navigate this new era of college football and I can succeed in it, right? 10 years ago, like you said, Ole Miss would not be able to do anything. They might win, 8 games, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's not going to get it done. So, guys, I have one question before we can move on here. This has been talked about here for weeks. How much credit does Lane Kiffin get for this? And I know there's some people that are going to say he gets no credit, right? But if we want to be honest with ourselves, this is Lane Kiffin's team. I don't care that he's not on the sidelines. I don't care that he's not the one calling the plays. In the back of Charlie Weiss's mind, in the back of Pete Golding's mind, he's asking himself, what would Lane do? Knowing what I know about Lane, what is he going to do? Pete Golding has never been a head coach in college football. He is looking at what he has seen over his years. Lane Kiffin helped this team get to this point. Lane Kiffin is the reason this team is at this point. Again, this is not taking anything away from what Ole Miss has done against Georgia or against Tulane, but this is Lane Kiffin's team, and I hate the way that everything's being portrayed right now. Lane Kiffin, the way he left was horrible. We've talked about it; it was not great. He did not have to allow any of these coaches to coach at Ole Miss, yet he has done it, and he is still allowing them to do it. Yet his name is still getting dragged through the mud here because he wants some of his guys back so they can help build a team where he is now. He didn't have to let Charlie Weiss go back and coach this game on tomorrow. He didn't have to do that, yet he's allowing him to do it because he's like, I want Ole Miss to succeed. Granted, he does have $1 million on the line because if Ole Miss wins, I believe he gets $1 million, which that's a hell of a perk. I'm not going to lie. Your old job basically succeeds. You get more. That's pretty cool. Where do you guys stand on this? Because I think that I'd give 70% of the success that Ole Miss has had right now to Lane Kiffin. Whoever wants the floor first.
Well, I'll let you have it first.
I believe that Lane deserves a lot of credit for this. We can be mad at him if you want to for leaving for LSU. I don't blame you. But he does deserve the bulk of the credit, I would say. I would say 70-30 split, maybe 80-20, because he did build this team. He is a wizard in the transfer portal with recruiting through that. He's adapted faster than anybody. He's adapted better than anybody. He built this roster from the ground up. He's the guy that went and found Trinidad Chambliss out of the D2 ranks and has made him one of the top 5, top 10 quarterbacks in the country, maybe the best quarterback playing right now. I don't know if that's crazy to say, but he's playing really great. That's Lane Kiffin. But as far as what they're doing right now, I do give that credit to Pete Golding because it would have been very easy for this team to lay down and die and feel sorry for themselves because their coach just left them for dead. But they're humming right now. They just dogged out a win against the only team that beat them this season in the biggest game of the season, and they're 2 wins away from a national championship. That credit right there goes to Pete Golding and his job of getting these guys up off the mat when they could have laid down and died. Yeah, no, of course, and you have to give it to Pete Golding. I think that he took this team when they, like you said, they could have said, "Hey, Lane's not here. We're going to lay down." They've come out there. They beat Georgia, right? They're 2 wins away.
I don't necessarily think all the shots at Lane Kiffin are needed, but I get it. There are probably some feelings there still. That's okay. They're human. Everyone, human nature. Bill, where do you stand on this?
I think that Lane Kiffin deserves 100% of the credit for where Ole Miss is right now, but not in the way that you think. I think a vast majority of it is like Will and you have talked about. He has navigated the NIL era. He's recruited very well. He went and got Trinidad Chambliss and got them to the CFP. But the success in the CFP is also attributed to Lane Kiffin as well, because a lot of the guys and a lot of the players there, they're winning to spite Lane Kiffin. Like Will talked about, you left us for dead. You went to Baton Rouge. Like it's a different story if he goes to a Big Ten school or an ACC school or even to the NFL. It's a different conversation. But in the SEC, we've talked about it. It means more. When you have two teams in the SEC, oh, by the way, you're going to go up the road and we're going to play you in a couple of years and we're going to play you probably next year. We're going to see you multiple times. There's a spite factor that, hey, you left us for dead. You were planning to take the staff and planning to take players and leave us a shell of ourselves. We're now going to go out and we're going to play hard for Pete Golding and we're going to win in spite of you. And that's where that other 30% comes into play. So I, for one, I love the shots back and forth because it's going to make that Ole Miss LSU matchup when it does come through. It's going to be must-see TV. And honestly, LSU next season with Lane Kiffin is must-see TV already. Anytime Lane's on TV, it's must-see TV.
I believe it's week 3 or week 4, one of those two. Yep. LSU's traveling to Oxford. And if that is not the college game day matchup, I don't know what college football is doing. It probably will be, but I mean, it's especially if Ole Miss goes and wins the championship. Could you imagine Lane having to walk back into Oxford like less than a year? Oh man, that would be wild. But before we move on, is there anything else you guys want to talk about from the last week of football before we move on here?
I think the big conversation piece that we have to ask ourselves, are we really sure that Alabama is not in trouble heading into next season? Because we just watched them struggle on a big stage against Indiana, and it's the same conversation we just had where maybe the game is passing them by, but also we had conversations all year long, especially in the CFP, if Kalen DeBoer is the guy for SEC football. I'm not saying they should fire Kalen DeBoer tomorrow. I'm not saying they should fire him next season. But you have to have the question in the back of your mind saying we just got outplayed, outclassed, and straight out BTA'd against a Big Ten team in the Rose Bowl. Are we sure that Alabama's not on some sort of hot seat of this may be the end of Alabama?
I mean, we kind of talked about it either last week or the week before, where Nick Saban's not walking through that door. That was a Nick Saban. Alabama's had success without Nick Saban, right? But Nick Saban has built the Alabama image that we have today. The playing field has been leveled. It is no longer Alabama is going to get every recruit because they're Alabama. You're seeing it, like you said, with Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is getting recruits. Tennessee's going to get recruits. Whatever. Mississippi State could end up getting recruits at some point. Like, it's going to be a thing at this point where it's not the same, and Alabama's going to have to adjust. It's these big time programs are going to have to adjust to this new era of college football. But yeah, Alabama might be in trouble. I don't know. They'll still probably win 9 to 10 games, but they might be a little bit of trouble. I mean, Will, what do you think of Alabama?
I think everything you guys said is spot on. I personally, when it comes to Kalen DeBoer, hand up, I was a guy that was saying he's not the guy after he lost to Florida State in week 1. And then he rattled off 8 straight wins, 4 versus ranked opponents, 2 on the road. And I was like all back in on him. So I have a very volatile relationship with him. Personally, I have to believe that in this era, you have a 3 to 4 year window of can you succeed? Can you get things done faster? Because you look at what Kurt Cignetti's doing, 2 years, he's 2 wins away from a natty, won a Big Ten championship. He's got, however, 25 wins or something like that in 2 years. It's insane. he has shortened the window for everybody else. That spells trouble for Alabama. Going into 2026, I look at it like this. If Kalen DeBoer can't at least win an SEC championship or go a little bit deeper in the college football playoff, it might be time to take a look at that buyout and make a move and see what you have in the future. And as far as Nick Saban's not walking back in that door, even if he did walk back in that door, it's a different era. He left for a reason. I don't think that he could dig you out of this hole. So Alabama, I don't think they're ever going to be the huge power winning 7 national championships in 10 or 15 years like they were. But I think there's a path for them forward to at least get back to a more competitive level than we've seen at these last 2 years. And they've been competitive, but they're not the same anymore. It's just a treacherous path that they're walking right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't remember the last time we saw an Alabama team in a playoff situation lose in that manner. That's what it is. It's not that they lost. Teams lose all the time. It's the fact that team didn't even show up on the field. And it's going to be a tough conversation, but if they have a year to fix this. Kalen DeBoer needs to fix this. I mean, Ty Simpson just went to the NFL, so he's not coming back. They have to find themselves a quarterback. And I mean, luckily for them, there are quarterbacks everywhere in the transfer portal, and that is where we are going to next. Perfect segue. Look at that, guys.
Look at
Transfer portal is wide open. It is open now. We have seen some signings. Only a couple bigger name guys have signed so far. There's still a lot out there. Probably the biggest one is Brendan Swordsby going to Texas Tech. I mean, that was kind of expected, I believe. And I know LSU made a last effort to get him, but I really do not believe that LSU ever really had a full chance. I think it was Texas Tech all the way. And, good for him. We'll see how he does. Sam Levitt's still out there. There's rumors about LSU for him. But the big domino I wanted to talk about, just before we get into anyone else, what happened last night? If you guys, I'm sure you both saw what happened. Damon Williams, decided that he wants to enter the transfer portal, despite him signing a contract with Washington just a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's legal, and I don't think the University of Washington thinks it's legal either, because they're about to take him to court potentially to make him fulfill the contract, which I have thoughts on. But what do you guys make of this situation? Bill, I'll go to you first, since I know you were very high on him, I believe, entering last season, and you talked about him throughout the year. What do you make of this whole situation with Williams?
I think this is the epitome of the issue with college football in its current state in the NIL. You have players, Damon Williams, signing that contract. It's a revenue share-based contract, which is part of the issue. He's getting a share of Washington's revenue in NIL payment. Well, he signs that contract, and now 4 days later, he's wanting out of it and potentially going elsewhere, likely to LSU. And the reason he's connected to LSU is because Lane Kiffin recruited him back in 2022 at Ole Miss. The problem with that is you're paying a player a revenue share, but then 4 days later, now he's going to another school, and now we've already seen the quarterback carousel come and go. There's no possible replacement for Washington. I also think there's a little bit of sour grapes out there right now as well about it. The big issue is there was a funeral going on with Washington that a lot of the coaching staff and players were at the funeral, and that's when Damon Williams announced that he was leaving Washington, leaving a lot of sour grapes in people's mouths. Here's the thing. If you're going to sign a player and they want to break that contract, just make them pay back the money. And if they haven't paid anything, let them go. Because here's the thing. The one thing that recruits will see nowadays is how you treat your current players. You take Damon Williams to court, I can guarantee that you will never have a top 5 recruit or a 5-star recruit come into Seattle, because the first conversation is, you did it to Damon Williams. What's stopping you from doing it to me?
Yeah, no, it's a weird situation all around. But Will, what do you make of this? Because this we haven't seen anything like this, at least on this grand of a level, since all the NIL contracts and everything have started. And this could change everything in college football depending on what happens.
Yeah, I I don't really know what to make of this because, like you said, we've never seen anything like this play out. I think it'll be a big learning curve, and I think that it'll bring a lot more order in the future moving forward. But right now, it's a mess, and I don't even know what to make of it. Honestly, it came suddenly. I can't make sense of it. It's a tough thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, it's unprecedented, which is the best word for it. And I know my whole thing with this is if he doesn't want to be there, let him go.
Yes.
Why are you going to make a big stink about this and force an unhappy player to come back and play for you when why would he do that? Why would he willingly be like, okay, I might not be able to leave Washington, but I'm not playing. Like, I'm not going to do this. Or I guess maybe in the contract he has to.
Could he just withdraw from school?
I mean,
Yep.
yeah, he
That could be
give the money
that
back,
could be a loophole, and then you have to find a way to give the money back, of course, probably. But maybe that's a loophole. Maybe that's
that is obviously a consideration. It's just a weird situation, and as Bill mentioned, LSU is connected to him. I saw Oregon might be interested in him, depending on what Dante Moore decides to do. That would be a shot at Washington if he were to go to their biggest rival and head to Oregon after all that. It would be interesting. The LSU connection is, as you mentioned, Bill, is an interesting one because LSU still has not signed a quarterback. They still need one. If I'm going to ask you guys this, I want to play a little game here. If you're Lane Kiffin, would you rather have Williams or Sam Leavitt? Because both of those guys have been connected. Leavitt was seen at a basketball game with Lane Kiffin yesterday, I think it was.
Yeah.
One during his visit. So both quarterbacks seem to be in play. Between the two of them, if you are Lane Kiffin for the SEC for LSU next year, who are you taking? Bill, I'll go to you first, since I know you were really high on at least Williams.
Yep. And I'm taking Damon Williams over Sam Leavitt. And the reason I'm taking Damon Williams is he does everything that Trinidad Chambliss does for you on a juiced up scale. Stronger arm, more athletic, more mobile in the pocket. You watched him. He was competing with Ohio State in that defense for a half before the floodgates eventually broke. Damon Williams is going to be if he lands in Baton Rouge, that's a dark horse Heisman candidate, if I've ever seen one, because of the way that Lane Kiffin's scheme is perfectly tailored for Damon Williams.
Will, do you agree with that, or are you taking Leavitt? Because, I mean, Leavitt went to the college football playoff. Let's just call it like it is. We have to give him his flowers for that.
Yeah, I will give him his flowers. I've been very high on him. I like Arizona State. I like what he's done to Arizona State. But for me, I do agree with Bill. I have to take Williams. Before this season started, I had Williams as a dark horse, like a long shot Heisman candidate, because I was looking at him. I was looking at their schedule, looking at the team around him. I was saying there's room for success here. There's a way for this to happen. Plus, with Sam Leavitt, I can't help but feel like with everything we're seeing right now, is there just too much drama around him? Because he left Arizona State kind of in a weird way. I don't know what happened there. I'm not throwing anything out there, but I think we've all seen the tweet with the theory that he was kicked off of the team. Is there any truth behind that? If so, has it picked up steam? Has it gotten to LSU? Has it gotten to Kentucky where he visited? I can't help but see bad things following because he goes to Kentucky, he has that visit. Everyone thinks he's kind of locked in there without being locked in. And then a day later after the visit, who do they go get? Kenny Minchie. That spells trouble. Somewhere along the line, you have to think Kentucky said, okay, we're probably not going to land Leavitt, and maybe we don't even want to. Then he goes to LSU. What happens? Last night, Damon Williams up and leaves Washington, says he's entering the transfer portal. He's got that LSU connection with Lane Kiffin, so maybe that's where they go. Where does Sam Leavitt go now? I just feel like there may be too much drama around him, and I still think that the upside is he is a great quarterback. He's a great player. If you want to deal with any drama that may be happening, then it's definitely worth it because Sam Leavitt, in my opinion, was the best quarterback in the transfer portal. It's just finding the right fit for him.
Would going to a place with Lane Kiffin be perfect, like a perfect storm with the drama of Kiffin, the drama of Leavitt, just mixing it all up in the drama that is Baton Rouge and all those crazy Tiger fans? I mean, I don't know. I just he looked pretty happy on the visit yesterday. I'll say that, but it is a little weird to me that it's been over a day and he has still not committed to LSU. So I wonder if LSU is waiting to see what happens with Williams before they do anything. Bill, you seem to have an opinion on that.
So a couple of opinions, and the first one, are we entirely positive that Levitt isn't just trying to leverage these schools against each other? Because like Will talked about, right? He was connected to Kentucky because of Will Stein. Then he was connected to Texas Tech. Then he was connected to LSU. Then he was connected to these other schools. And it just seems like he's connected to all these schools and he takes these visits, but he never really actually commits. So it's almost like he's trying to pit these schools against each other for the best NIL payment. The second part, this is the thought that was most interesting to me. Let's say Damon Williams ends up at LSU. Let's just stop Sam Levitt from going to Washington.
Nothing.
Because if you remember, Sam Levitt was offered by Washington in December of 2022. He got an offer from him. And while they're not the same quality of player, I prefer Damon Williams. They're the same mold of the gunslinger, athletic, mobile guy that you saw Sam Levitt with Jordan Tyson this season. It's not a one-for-one comparison, but Sam Levitt would be the best quarterback available.
What about Alabama?
And I thought Alabama as well. But my concern with Alabama, are they going to be – Sam Levitt thrives best in an up-tempo offense. And I feel like Alabama's a year away from being a year away to run an up-tempo offense. I think they're probably gonna run what they have with Keelan Russell and see if they can fix that. And then if not, they're probably shopping in the portal in 2027. So I think Levitt to Washington, Damon Williams to LSU is the best outcome for all parties. But I have questions on what Levitt and Levitt's camp is doing, because it seems like he's connected to all these schools. And it seems like he gets connected to a school on Monday, then on Tuesday it's another school, Wednesday it's another school, and Thursday it's another school. And it just feels very, who's going to pay me the most? Not to say that that's the case, but it feels that way.
I mean, I think he was taking a visit with Tennessee as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, he's just bouncing around the SEC at this point. It seems like he just wants to go to an SEC team. But, I mean, it's going to be interesting because I don't think anyone thought Williams was going to be in the portal especially after he went back to Washington. So that kind of throws a wrench. And then you have DJ Lagway, who's still out there. I mean, he's probably going to Baylor, as we have talked about on this show. You have Dylan Raiola. He's still out there. I mean, it's not like we have months here for the transfer portal. It closes in 9 days?
9 days.
These players are going to have to sign soon. But before we move on, Bill, I know you like to throw out some hypotheticals. I know you like to put your hat on here, and anything you want to give to the people, you want to give anything to watch out for. I mean, you've kind of called some things to watch out for, so just want to throw that out for you.
Yeah, so a couple of things to watch out for if you are looking at the transfer portal. Number one, we talked about his old school. Arizona State is quietly putting together one of the best transfer portal classes out there. You get a quarterback in Cutter Boley who fits what Kenny Dillingham wants, very strong arm, very athletic. But then, oh, by the way, you go and get very talented wide receivers to supplement him in Omarion Miller from Colorado, who's going to be a first-round pick in next year's NFL draft. Reed Harris from Boston College, who's just a big body stud of a player. And then you just continue to add talent around him. Josh Atkins at offensive tackle, Ashton Stamps at corner coming from LSU. The other one that I would say to keep an eye out for, that I'm waiting for the shoe to drop on, is Cam Coleman. We just watched Parker Livingstone transfer from Texas to Oklahoma. You only do that if you feel your job is in jeopardy. And Cam Coleman, I called Cam Coleman to Texas when he announced his transfer. It just felt like the right fit. I have a feeling we're going to see Cam Coleman land in the Lone Star State somewhere, but it wouldn't shock me if the Longhorns miss out and we see Texas Tech, or we see even Baylor, or we see Texas A&M get involved. But I will say this now. I am staking this claim right here. Camera, look in my eyes here. Cam Coleman is playing in the Lone Star State in 2026.
Texas Tech would be something. You get Sorsby, you get Coleman. I mean, they're building something there, and I know they got their ass kicked in the playoff game. Let's just call it what it is. That might be more motivation to build a better team. They threw money at this team. They got to the playoff. They fell short. Throw a little more money, maybe you win it. I mean, who knows? Anything you want to look out for, Will, that you want to talk about before we get into these actual games?
I think that what Bill was just talking about is really interesting. There may be an arms race in the state of Texas pretty soon with Texas A&M, Texas, Texas Tech. Those are three powerhouses that are probably going to be perennial playoff contenders for years to come. With all the competition between those three, will those three schools be the top three destinations for everybody for years to come, knowing that they can throw a lot of money at you, especially Texas Tech, with Cody Campbell and Patrick Mahomes funding their NIL and just throwing whatever they want at anybody? I think that the state of Texas may be the go-to place for college football again.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm even as an LSU fan, I'm cool with that. It's always fun when certain teams are better, and transfer portal has made things interesting all over the country. But we will see what happens. We still got 9 more days, and there's a lot to happen, a lot of players left to sign. But we got to get into the actual games that are going on as well in this weird calendar that college football has put together. Let's talk about this first one. We have Miami taking on Ole Miss in one of the weirder playoff games I think we've ever seen, with considering the two teams and how they've gotten here and everything going on. Will, you are the guest on this show. I'm going to throw it to you first. What do you think of this game, and who do you think ends up moving on to the national championship?
I think that this is a fun matchup. I think that this is a matchup that the college playoffs kind of needed because it came out of nowhere. And these are, in a lot of ways, these are like the first two Cinderellas in the 12-team era, if you want to call them that. And the stories behind them are both great. For me, I'll look at I've been going back and forth in this. When I found out that this was going to be the matchup, I said Miami. And I said Miami pretty confidently. But I can't help but fight this little devil on my shoulder saying that Trinidad Chambliss is going to be able to break contain, get out there and make something happen, make one extra play. No matter how good the Miami defensive line is, maybe he can just make one extra play against them. I mean, he did it plenty of times against Georgia. He had some beautiful throws out on the run. There was one where he was rolling out to the right. He had a beautiful throw, downfield connection, one of the best throws I've seen on the year. If he can do that one more time, just have a game like that where he puts the cape on, I think it's hard for me to not pick Ole Miss in this game, and I think I'm going to. I think that they're a wagon offensively. I think that they can come up with the timely defensive stops when they need to. And the matchup itself, it's kind of like Miami probably wants to win a rock fight, and Ole Miss probably wants to win a track meet. Who can make the other team play their game? I can't think of a time, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Bill probably will somehow. If I can't think of a time if Ole Miss this season scored less than 30 points in a game. They may have one time, but if this game is going to be played like I think it will, as a track meet in the 30s, maybe even the 40s, number one, can Miami keep up? They've not really had to play in that kind of game against this level of team. They did have to play in Notre Dame, but that wasn't a game that was played in the 30s or even the 40s. If I think this game will be played at that level, I don't think that Miami is going to have the horses to keep up. I love their defensive line, and I think that they can get to Chambliss. But I think that Chambliss has enough to make this a track meet, and I think those weapons outside are too dangerous. I think that they can get behind the Miami secondary one too many times, and I think that they can pull a win out of this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a hell of a preview right there. Thank you, Bill. Where are you going with this one? Because you have been all over Miami's defense, and it's I don't know. I'm curious where you go with this.
Yep. So to answer Will's question, 3 times technically, 2 for sure, Ole Miss scored less than 30 points this season. They scored 30 against Kentucky in week 2. They scored 24 against LSU and 24 versus Washington State. Other than that, it's been 30 or above pretty much the entirety of the way. Here is the thing. Among the teams that they've played up to this point, Miami's defense has produced the highest turnover rate, 3.7%, the highest interception rate, 5.3%, the highest sack rate, almost 13%, the highest pressure rate, 42%, and the most tackles for loss per game at 7. But the big thing here to stress is not just Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor putting pressure on Trinidad Chambliss. It's Keontae Scott at the nickel cornerback position. You watched the way he read Julian Sayan's mind and picked that ball off for a pick six. That is otherworldly stuff that you teach in installs in week 1 of the season. And Corey Heatherman's unit is playing out of their mind. However, this game is going to come down to the arm of Carson Beck. Beck has got to make plays because Ole Miss is going to shut down Mark Fletcher Jr. They're going to take away the wide receiver talent and force Beck to beat them through the air. I've been on Miami all year long. If Miami can stop the run, they're going to blow Ole Miss out of the water. You go back and you look at it, Miami had a 61% pressure rate in the first half against Ohio State. That dropped to almost 43% in the second half because Ohio State started running the ball. I'm taking Miami, but it's going to be on a last-second pick six from Trinidad Chambliss.
Calling your shots with the
What a
pick
call.
six, man. Bill.
Crafty.
Bill. We are going to disagree on this one.
Yep.
I think the college football gods, whatever you want to call them, I think they are looking down at Ole Miss right now saying, your coach left you in a horrible way. And this is coming from an LSU fan. I think Ole Miss gets to the championship game. I think the story just is so beautiful. They deny Miami the chance to win it in their own stadium. They are rocking on offense, as Will talked about. And I think we have seen it time and time again. Sometimes good offense beats good defense. Not always. Sometimes defense wins. But Ole Miss's defense has been weirdly good as well. They're not as shut down as Miami by any means. Miami clearly has the better defense. I just don't trust Carson Beck. That is where this game comes down to with me. To me, it's been 51-49, just going back and forth. And at the end of the day, I'm going to take the better quarterback, and the better quarterback for me is Trinidad Chambliss. I think Ole Miss goes to the championship game. And I do not want to hear this SEC is dead nonsense. There is still an SEC team in the playoff right now. I don't want to hear if Ole Miss had been eliminated and there was no other SEC team, fine. I don't want to hear it anymore. Just because Alabama got blown out does not mean the SEC is dead. I do not want to hear it. Ole Miss is still here. Ole Miss is very, very good. They're probably going to keep being good even without Kiffin. Give me Ole Miss to get to the championship game. What a story that would be. What a story for either of these two teams. Because as Will mentioned, these are kind of like Cinderella stories a little bit. You know, Miami, who knew if Miami was even going to get in when the bracket came out? Ole Miss, what was going to happen without Lane Kiffin, right? And now one of the two teams is going to rep their side of the bracket in the championship game. I love it. It's going to be really fun to watch. I just think Chambliss is better, and we talked about it all year. I don't trust Beck. That is where I am at this point. But Bill, I want to give you a chance here. We got to talk about this game, Bill, because Oregon and Indiana, we have a rematch of one of the more entertaining games from the regular season when Indiana went into Autzen, took down the Ducks. Bill, I'm giving you the floor here first because you have been Mr. Indiana. You have Bloomington loves you. You did not call them bland or boring or whatever Josh called them all those years
A
ago.
basketball school, I
Basketball
think was the
school.
exact term.
That was it. Basketball school. I'm assuming you're sticking with the Hoosiers, but I know you look at numbers, you analyze everything. Are you sticking with your Indiana pick or are you switching over to the Ducks?
I'm sticking with the Hoosiers. However, there are two things that if I am a Duck fan, I am circling on the calendar, and it's third down and it's Dante Moore. And the reason I say that, the best way to beat Indiana this season, if you look at the 5 games decided by 13 points or less, the Hoosiers won almost 54% of all third downs, which means converting to first down, and won those games by about an average of a touchdown. In the other 9 games, they won 72% of their third downs and won by an average of 45 points. If you don't get this team off the field on third down, Indiana will blow you out of the water. Well, you're probably asking yourself, how do I do that? You have to be willing to throw the ball down the field. Moore was 4 of 13 on passes thrown 7 or more yards down the field. He took 6 sacks. If they get after Moore early and they restrict that downfield passing game and they turn it into a deke and dunk passing game, you're now in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, where that Indiana defense will collapse down. And when they collapse down, it's going to make life tough for Moore, because Moore still struggles with pressure up the middle. You go back and you watch the Texas Tech game in the first half and watch the stunts that David Bailey and Romello Height were pulling off against the interior of that Oregon offensive line, and you were concerned. I'm taking Indiana. It's going to be much closer than the first matchup, but if it all boils down to it, I trust that Fernando Mendoza is going to make the plays needed to move the chains on third down. I cannot trust Dante Moore to get there.
Yeah. Will, are you sticking with Bill with this one?
No, I'm going to go with Oregon here. I'm kind of nervous about it. This is going to be a great game, I think. But I look at the first game and I also look at the Texas Tech game if you want to look at that. I don't think that Oregon offensive line is it's not anything to give you much hope. But one big thing for them is they're going to have to find a way. If Dante Moore was sped up in that Indiana game and he was kind of having the playoff schedule, he was really not seeing everything right, you're going to have to be prepared for that. I think that Dan Lanning's going to have them prepared for that. I think that coming into this, your game plan is going to have to be, let's try to get the ball out faster because we had to last time. Let's be prepared to do that this time. Let's get our skill players out on the outside, Malik Benson, DeCorian Moore. Those guys weren't much of a factor at all, if I remember correctly, in the first game, and they weren't much of a factor whenever it was last week when they played Texas Tech. You have to get those guys involved. You can't really have a game again against this same team where your star players on the outside are getting 2-3 catches for 25 yards. You got to find a way to get them involved. I choose to believe that Dante Moore is going to come into this game ready for that pass rush to get after him, and I think that they're going to have an answer for it. I think that they'll get the ball out quicker. I think that they'll get their athletes in space, hopefully get them more involved. I think that'll be the difference in the game. I think that all around the board, this is a pretty evenly matched team for team. I think that you can give the Oregon skill players a slight advantage. You can probably give the quarterback advantage to Indiana, even though they're all great. But I think it's going to come down to that. I think that Dan Lanning's going to have his guys ready to play. If there's anyone that I want game planning for me and preparing and a guy that's learned from his mistakes, it's Dan Lanning. I think that he's going to have his guys ready to play out there. I think that they're going to come in with the right game plan. Tough game, close game. I'll take Oregon, though.
I was fully prepared to be the only person to take the Ducks. So thank you, Will. I don't know. You made some of my argument for me, so thank you. Bill, I'm going to have to tell you again, you're going to be wrong, and I'm sorry. Yeah, Oregon's winning this game, and I don't think it's going to be a blowout by any means. I think it's going to be a very good game, as you both have talked about. It's very hard to beat a team twice in a season. We've talked about this a couple times. I don't believe it's happened, really, except for maybe Texas Tech and BYU. I think that's one of the only instances I can recall from this entire season where that had happened. Plus, last time, when Indiana beat Oregon, in Oregon, albeit, Oregon was coming off of a high of beating Penn State. And I know what Penn State ended up becoming, but in that moment, Penn State was a top team. It was one of the biggest wins of the season, in overtime. Then Oregon went on a bye week right after that game. They had, almost 2 weeks to prepare for Indiana. I think they let the win get to their heads, emotional high. They had a letdown game against Indiana. I don't think they're going to have a letdown game once again. I think Oregon is going to rise to the occasion. I think Dan Lanning is the better coach. Taking nothing away from Kirk Cignetti, what he has done in Indiana, but he needs to prove it more than 1 year for me. Dan Lanning has done it at least a few years. Neither has actually won anything, so we'll see what happens with that. At least one of them will be in the championship game. Can you guys tell me how often Heisman winners win the national championship? Because it doesn't happen very often. It did happen 2 different times in the last 10 years, but it hasn't happened very often in the history of college football. The last one that did it was Devonta Smith in 2020. Joe Burrow did it the year before, and before that it was 2013 with Jameis Winston. It doesn't happen very often where the Heisman ends up winning the national championship. I think we see that trend play out once again this year. Credit to Mendoza for a hell of a season. Credit to Indiana, but the buck stops here. I think Oregon wins. Oregon gets to the national championship game, as I even said weeks ago. Give me the Ducks. Sorry, Bill, your Indiana story comes so close to being finished, but the Ducks are going to fly, and Indiana is going back to being a basketball school.
So
just kidding. I love you, Indiana. You're fine.
I will throw 2 statistics out. First one comes to us from Bud Elliott, CBS Sports. Bud does a lot of great work over there, so make sure you go check out his work. He has what's called a blue chip ratio. And a blue chip ratio is defined as you sign more 4- and 5-star recruits than 2- and 3-star recruits over a 4-year period. To give you an idea, the lowest blue chip ratio that's ever won a national championship was Clemson in 2016 at 52%. Indiana, 8%.
Yep.
Oregon sits at about 80%. But this is the one thing that I still go back to every time with Indiana. And it's they have grown men who are not youngsters. This isn't their first rodeo. Their starting lineup with Stephen Daly in averages 32 career starts per player. You take him out, 1 linebacker and 5 defensive backs have started at least 25 games in their college career. They have the experience factor over Oregon. And we talk all the time when we get to the NFL and we get to these high-profile games, you want players who have done it before. You want a coaching staff to put them in the best position to succeed. It's going to come down who makes that last adjustment. And I say this now, the winner of this game is your national champion, because whoever they play is going to get waxed off the face of the planet.
So even if Miami wins, they in their home stadium, you think either one of these teams whacks them?
Yes.
Interesting. I mean, the Ducks are going to win the championship. We've talked about this for weeks at this point, Bill. I'm sorry, your Indiana dream is dead. It's dead.
Hey,
it's dying on Friday night.
I've had Indiana as the national champion for a while. I had Indiana and Miami a month ago when we did the first prediction. So
you did. I will give you that, Bill. You have been with this Indiana team all year long, preseason, everything, and I don't think many people saw this coming, but you did, and that's why Bill knows ball, and that's where we're at this point. But it's going to be a hell of a 2 days for college football, and then we're getting the national championship game, which is going to be fun. Transfer portal is going to be closing soon. But before we get out of here, guys, anything you guys want to leave for the people? Anything you just want to talk about before we leave? Floor is either for whoever wants to talk about it. You don't want to talk about anything? You can just tell me to shut up. That works too. I'm cool with that. So I know I talk a lot. So anything you guys want to throw out there?
Will, you're our guest. I'll give you the floor first.
I don't have much to say, but I'll say this. I'm going to throw out a little recruiting pitch to Sam Levitt. If you want to come on down to Rocky Top, please, because I'll teach you every word of Rocky Top if you want to come on down. It's a cool place to be. You can come play in a Josh Heupel offense. You can look like a Heisman candidate. You can look like an NFL draft prospect, a first-round pick maybe. I don't know, maybe next year we could be seeing him in Rocky Top. I would love to see it personally. I know I just talked about all the drama and everything, but I can't deny I'm a big Tennessee fan. I'm a big Sam Levitt fan. I think that would be a match made in heaven. So I know he's watching this too. So, Sam, come on down, please.
Oh, he's 100% watching this. I texted him the link an hour ago. So, we were talking about LSU. I told him to go to Tennessee. I wanted Damon Williams. But, Bill, anything you want to throw out to the people?
3 things. And they're all quarterbacks.
We get 3 things here. Wow.
Okay. I bring 3 things. The first thing, The first sleeper quarterback that you need to keep your eyes on, down in the Big 12, going from Harvard to TCU, Jaden Craig. You look at him, this is a slightly smaller stature version of Trey Lance. Athletic as all get out, big arm talent, and now he's going down there with Sonny Dykes, who's going to try to upgrade his offense from an air raid ball to more of a pro-style scheme. Do not be shocked if we are talking about Jaden Craig as one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 next season. Number 2, Aiden Childs going from Michigan State to Northwestern is going to be the most underrated pickup in the transfer portal at the quarterback position, because he's now going with Chip Kelly and Neuheisel, both of which who have had success with mobile athletic quarterbacks. You just watch what Neuheisel did with Nico Alamayava and UCLA. It's going to be on a stronger scale at Northwestern, and don't be surprised if Northwestern makes some noise in 2026. But number 3, the most underrated pickup in the transfer portal is Rocco Becht going from Iowa State to Penn State, because Penn State needed a presence, a veteran presence, because we saw what happened when Drew Aller went down. It fell apart. Rocco Becht and Matt Campbell are going to give Penn State that solid, solidifying presence. Penn State is going to be right back in the thick of things next year and beyond.
I love it. And thank you for the gifts, Bill. We always appreciate your gifts. You gave us 3 of them here.
Yes.
So we appreciate it. But we just want to say thank you to everyone that has tuned in, that is tuning in, that will tune in. And I know some of the West Coast people, they like to listen to this later because they are doing things at this point. But make sure to like, subscribe the YouTube channel, like the video. We appreciate it. We appreciate all the content. We want to thank Will for joining us on the show today.
Yes.
And
Thank you guys
it's
for
gonna be
having me.
fun.
It was a blast.
Yeah, no, of course. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you for picking my picks with me. We're gonna make Bill eat his words. Go Ducks. But that's gonna do it for us here on the TWSN Tailgate Show. Let's have an awesome few days of college football, and we will see you next time. Have a good few days, guys.